So today I'm having a chat with a musician whose work is relatively new to me. I am a new fan of his and have been digging into his music, work that he's doing solo and with several different artists that he works with, and just a all-around great musician, singer, songwriter, performer, and just can't wait to find out his story and talk about what he's doing and hopefully turn the world on to some of the great music that he's producing. So with all that said, it's a real pleasure to have Matt Krahula on. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Brad.
Yeah. I have really leaned into all the stuff that you're doing, man. You're quite a talented fellow, songwriting and singing and playing, and yeah, I really it was a really wonderful surprise getting to discover all the good stuff you're doing.
Oh, that's really kind of you to say. It's been I've had a lot of kind of exciting projects coming out recently, and I'm just glad to get some fresh ears on a lot of them, get some new audiences, and it's been a really exciting couple months as I put out my last record, and people have been kind of just really responding well to it. So
yeah, it's really good. I can't wait to talk about it and just kind of the what led to recording that and just some of the nuts and bolts of how that all happened, because yeah, it just sounds really good, and again, great songwriting, great production on it. Really dig the vocals, a lot of the harmony stuff on it's really nice. And I should say to everyone as we're recording this that I'm super jealous because I'm sitting here in St. Louis, Missouri today, and Matt is in Hawaii where he lives. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. How long have you lived there?
I moved here in 2018, so I've been here about 6 years. October 2018.
Yeah. What led to that decision to move there?
I had been kind of gigging in and around New York City and touring the mainland pretty consistently from like 2006 through 2018. And there was a few of the projects that I had really been pushing over that time seemed to be kind of wrapping up or changing, how much I would be doing them. And I knew there were some new projects on the horizon, and I didn't really want to stay in New York City where I was and, have my new music come out and put together a new band, but then go play all the same venues and have all the same people coming out and, really having to push my friends to come see this new, vision that I had when they'd already been supporting me for, the last 15 years. And I wanted kind of a complete fresh start with just both musically and with atmosphere too.
Yeah, so you located to Honolulu, right? Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I had always kind of had this, dream of living on an island, and I just thought it would be a really cool lifestyle. You see it in the media and movies. You see this kind of laid back atmosphere. And before I picked up and came here, I did quite a bit of research on the Caribbean and a few other options. And it just seemed that the place that I would be able to find the most work would more than likely be Hawaii. And so I had never been here before. I packed up my car and I drove from New York City to LA, and then I shipped my car to Honolulu from there, and I've been here ever since.
Wow, what a fun leap of faith to do that! And as I can see reading your bio, I mean, you've been busy since you've been there. You work a lot, and you work with a lot of various artists, and a lot of different styles. So I know that has to be exciting for you to get to cover a lot of territory with different music.
It's been a really fun adventure, and I was very fortunate right off the bat. I landed a couple of very big gigs here, and there was a bass player. I work as a sideman. Aside from my singer-songwriter life, I also am a sideman on like electric and upright bass, and I sing background vocals and stuff. And right when I moved here, one of the bass players that was gigging with a lot of the biggest artists moved off island. He moved back to Boston, and I met him in passing, and he introduced me to a lot of people really quickly and told me, to swing by one of his gigs, which was playing bass for Henry Kapono, who was a legendary Hawaiian singer-songwriter. He's been playing since the 70s. He just celebrated 50-year anniversary of his first record, which was released on Columbia Records. And so within a few months of being here, ended up in his band playing bass for him. And I travel all over the islands with him. And I get to play with a lot of his cool friends too. He knows everybody. I got to play with Mick Fleetwood, John Cruz, a lot of the really famous Hawaiian musicians. They all will come in and sit in with him, and it's a really awesome way to immediately get to know everybody here.
Sure, wow. And what a great connection to and the timing of that other bass player moving. I mean, that doesn't just happen for everyone, man. That's really cool that happened to you.
Yeah, it's a kind of a fun story, because a lot of people will say, oh, his name was John Hawes. He's a fantastic musician too, and he was leaving and I was showing up, and so we never really got to know each other that well. But he had such a huge impact on my life. And I always tell people how grateful I am. I know he's a great guy, but my experiences from him are more than my experiences with him,
Yeah, sure.
He really paved the way for me to have a really nice life here.
Yeah. Well, and to have such minimal of a relationship with each other, and him to go to bat for you, that it just kind of set the path for you to be where you are now. It's really amazing. What is the music scene like there compared to other cities? I mean, I know culturally it's quite a different place. Is the music scene reflective of that?
There's a lot of kind of different answers to that question. So being on an island, there is like a heavy pull towards the reggae scene. And so that makes up a big part of the people making original music. But there's a lot more to it than that. There's a lot of people doing traditional Hawaiian music too, which is really awesome. I play bass in a bluegrass band, and there is a small but talented bluegrass scene here, and it's a really tight knit community. They do like a camp out every year and do like a bluegrass weekend.
Oh, cool.
And, I play in an indie rock band that's like kind of sounds a little bit like Rod Stewart meets Bruce Springsteen meets, New York City.
Yeah.
Indie punk kind of stuff. And I play with Henry, who is like kind of a classic songwriter. They were kind of described in the 70s as the Hawaiian Simon and Garfunkel. And he just writes, really nice songs. And so there is quite a lot of variety, but I think there's more variety in the stuff that's happening here than maybe the stuff that's brought here from the mainland. So like the promoters bring a lot of reggae, and then they end up bringing a lot of like EDM and DJs, because it's a lot less people to fly, and they can keep the cost down to get a bigger artist, and a good selling show without bringing 5 or 6 guys. That's just one guy and his equipment.
Yeah. Do you find that you are playing mostly for locals, or is it a lot of tourist listeners? What is that demographic like?
So it's a mix. I think a lot of it. So I have a few different residencies at like bars and restaurants around the island. And I think pretty much everywhere you go, it's a mix, because there is such a huge impact by tourism here. So even the places that, lean more towards a local draw might have, 15 to 25% tourists there too, especially the bars. And a lot of the good paying gigs are right in Waikiki, which is the tourism center for Oahu. And so I think especially in like the bars, anything close to the beach is going to be heavily tourist, which is kind of a fun thing, because, when I was on the mainland, I would hop in my car and drive 3 hours to get to a new crowd, but now I just walk up the street and there's a new crowd there for me every night.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, that's nice.
I'm on tour, but I'm not. They come to me.
That's great. That's really awesome. I was reading your bio, and I was really interested to learn that you majored in classical performance on upright, and I was curious about that and what you, I guess, went into the major thinking, and then maybe what you were thinking on your way out of it. Is it being someone that majored in classical percussion performance that
Oh,
wound
cool.
up becoming a bass player and singer, which is really funny hearing you talk about that, that's what you're doing. That I kind of went in with one idea and came out with another. And I'm curious what that path was like for you and that whole classical scene experience.
Yeah, so I went in, you go in I was 17 or 16 when I was doing the auditions, and then I started just before my 18th birthday at Purchase College, and I got my degree there, a bachelor degree in performance on upright bass, and I was really, really fortunate. I studied with Timothy Cobb, who was the principal bassist of the New York Philharmonic. So when I was leaving school, or when I was leaving high school, I knew I wanted to go into music. I knew that I didn't want it to become like a weekend enjoyment or something on the side. I just didn't realize at the time I was playing in like a band with some high school buddies. I was playing electric bass, and I guess I didn't realize there was other options to continue forward with music. Kind of my guidance counselor and the people, music teachers that I had kind of said, well, you can get a performance degree or you can get a teaching degree. And I didn't really want to go the teaching route. I was more interested in the performance route. So going in, I really thought, in 4 years, I'll be auditioning for symphonies. And I met some really interesting people there. I got to Purchase, and I realized that, well, there's a jazz department, and there's a studio production department and a songwriting department and all these other opportunities that I kind of wasn't aware of going in. And being a bass player, everybody in the production and songwriting department is instantly interested because there's not that many bass players. And so I ended up gigging quite a bit. I had a pretty popular band in college called Fireflies, and we ended up winning this international battle of the bands. We got first place out of like 5,000 bands.
Wow, that's cool.
And they named us the #1 independent band on the country, or in the world. And for whatever that's worth. And we, the finals were in Germany, and the prize was we opened up for Pink. And so I was doing these kind of things and realizing that my path was kind of changing, and that sitting in a room and practicing orchestral excerpts for 6 to 8 hours a day to stay on top of it to be competitive wasn't really what I wanted to do anymore. And I love classical music, but it was starting to kind of feel like I was in the world's oldest cover band.
That's a great way to put it.
And there's not a lot of room for interpretation. It's really, this is how it's been done for the last 100 years or 200 years. And that's the way we're going to do it
right
next week.
Yeah.
And I just kind of fell in love with the songwriting aspect. And so there were two really amazing songwriters in the group Fireflies. The one guy, his name's Dan Romer. And he went on, he's a pretty big time Hollywood composer for film. He composed all the music for Disney's Luca, and he's done a ton of big movies, and he was the lead singer of that band in college. And then my other buddy, Will, was the lead guitarist. He's a fantastic songwriter too. So I just learned as much as I could from them. And they were both studio wizards, and I was able to pick up a lot of little tricks, and I just kept practicing. And by the time I was done with school, I kind of knew my path was going to be more in the singer-songwriter, rock band, Americana world. And so that's what I've been doing ever since.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I understand, and that resonates with me, because I think I walked into the university music program thinking that, I was going to leave and I was going to start taking major symphony orchestra auditions, and I was practicing excerpts all the time. And if you're committed to that, and if that's the path you want to go, good, but it just wasn't the path for me. And I understand and realize that I just don't think I could spend my career doing that. It's just not where my heart was. Now, that all said, I know for me, I wouldn't trade anything for that knowledge that I got of performing in those ensembles and playing under conductors, because you really learn different ways of maybe where the beat sits, and if you're playing where you are in the section. And I was a percussionist, but I'm sure as an upright bass player, as a string bass player, your pocket, probably you left having a good understanding of that, playing in that section.
Well, yeah. And I get a lot of compliments on like my timing in the studio, and it's definitely because I spent years and years working with a metronome, and I don't think the other outlets for music really stress that the way classical music does. I always had, when I would be practicing in the bass studio, some of the other bass students would laugh. Some of my friends would come in to get their basses, and I'd have, an A440 drone note going, so my intonation was being checked the whole time, and I would have a click going the entire time for anything I was working on. And I think a huge thing that I got from all that training is, aside from the timing, just learning how to practice, and that can be translated to anything in the music world, really, whether it's singing or playing electric bass or upright, or I play guitar too. But just knowing, like, slow something down, learn it at a speed you can do it, and then get it right. And like, just making sure you didn't just get it right once, because I had a teacher that made me get everything right 5 times in a row, or I had to start again. And like those kind of like little tricks, I think it was a really nice foundation.
Yeah. And that learning, it's one thing to practice, but but then to practice correctly and practice consistently, that is the key. Because, and especially if then you take that and you're in a recording studio, or understanding the consistent piece of that, I think is so important to, that has to be picked up in the practice room.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really great, man. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Albany, New York.
Okay. Yeah. I went to kind of close, but maybe not too close. I went 2 summers to the Chautauqua Institution, which is near Buffalo, and it was an orchestral program. It was like 8 weeks, and I did it summer before junior and summer before senior years in high school. And it's
awesome.
We did Rite of Spring, Bartok Concerto for Orchestra, all that,
nice,
all the fun stuff, and I really enjoyed my New York experience.
Well, they have a lot of good musicians up there because Eastman School of Music's up that way, and so they have a good collection of people to pull from.
Yeah. So were you singing and playing guitar before all of this happened in college, or when did you pick that up?
I could play like chords and stuff on guitar, and I was self-taught. I kind of started to teach myself guitar at the end of high school, and I got really serious about songwriting when I met Dan and Will in school, and they were both writing songs for the band, and I thought, well, I'd like to write a song for the band because I think this band is going places. So they had been writing since they were 13, 14 years old, maybe younger. I know, for instance, Dan won the John Lennon songwriting competition when he was 16.
Oh, wow.
So I felt like I had a lot of catching up to do, and I would sit down and for a while write 2 to 3 songs a day, and I practiced songwriting the way that I was practicing bass. I just continued to do it. And, there were a lot of throwaways. I'm sure there's entire notebooks where I didn't use anything. But I think it allowed me to catch up at a pretty quick rate. And then also just being around people that were doing it at such a high level, and seeing the things that they were doing, and just even little comments. I would play I remember playing a song for Dan. We're all apartment mates at that point too, and we would share music that we were working on. And he said just something along the lines, "Oh, this is like really great melodies and stuff, but what's the hook?" And I was like, really the first time I'd thought about that being a part of a song, and so then every song I wrote from that point forward, I tried to have a hook, and I listened to the stuff he was doing to create hooks in his music because his stuff was so catchy, and I tried to take a lot of that to what I did, and I analyzed a lot of the music that I really liked, stuff like Neil Young and Cat Stevens, Talking Heads, Beatles, and people who are writing on another level, and I just tried to take little tricks that they use and incorporate that into my music.
Yeah, these songwriters that can say a lot in 3 minutes, pack a lot of material into 3 minutes is pretty amazing. And I did notice that in listening to your music is that I think I can tell you really draw from a wide array of influences. I hear country music in there. I can hear, of course, the singer-songwriter thing. You say Talking Heads, it makes sense. I'm like, oh yeah, of course, yeah. I can hear a big amount of varied artists in the songs that you write.
Yeah, I don't really have like a genre that I don't like. I think there's really good music being made in most genres, and some of it's just undeniably good.
Yeah,
and some of it crosses genres. I like things that kind of push the envelope. I think that's why the Talking Heads are so fun. They're doing something completely their thing. You don't really hear another group that sounds like that.
Yeah, and can we talk about Tina Weymouth's bass playing too? Man,
yeah,
such fun bass playing. I just love
She's
the way
awesome.
she's so good.
And she learned bass just to be in that band too.
Yeah,
it wasn't
I
like
know.
She was a bass player. They were like just needed somebody to fill those shoes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she's a great player. What is your? I always ask that. I seem to have a lot of drummers on here, so I asked this question about their relationship with bass players. So it's nice to get to ask a bass player about this. What is your? What do you look for in a drummer when you're playing in a band? What do you want the drummer to give you to be able to lock in?
Ideally, in a perfect world, I'd be playing. Every gig would be with a drummer where I don't really have to think about it.
Yeah,
they're the piece that holds it down, and I'm along for the ride. And hopefully, they feel kind of the same way, looking back in my direction. If I'm auditioning drummers for my projects, I've been very fortunate. I've worked with some really, really great drummers, and one thing that I'll instantly listen to is how their kick drum is interacting with the bass. And if that's not something they kind of are in tune with, I would probably move on.
Yeah.
From one or the other, whoever's not getting it, I guess.
Yeah.
I really like, I think I'm one of the few people not one of the few, but I get a lot of flack for being a huge Ringo Starr fan. I just think he's really solid. And
I agree.
Recorded all that stuff to tape. There was no overdubs, and it's just really solid, and he doesn't overplay. And he plays the right parts. I really like what he does.
Yeah, and I think what he played, it just really complemented what Paul was playing, right? I mean, they weren't always playing this. They weren't playing the same pattern with each other all the time. They were sometimes, but that interplay between their parts just worked so well. And
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just love how his it just kind of sits between being straight and being swung. I mean, it's just like right there in the middle, and I just love the way his playing feels.
Yeah, same. And then as far as like other drummers that I really, really respect, somebody like Levon Helm, I just think his feel is he pulls back so hard, but it just clicks in at all the right moments and finds the one right when you need him to be there. And it's just he's like a drummer where you hear it and you kind of know it's him playing.
Yeah, I love to get to play with drummers that understand, that are either singers themselves or understand what it takes to play with a singer, because it's not just playing a groove or playing a part. They understand where that foundational role is with making the vocal happen.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
When I was in New York, I was really lucky. I played with the same drummer for almost probably 2003 to when I left in 2018, and he was just so talented. And no matter who I put in the band, too, he was the best singer. His vocal harmonies and everything, he had the biggest range, he had the best intonation, and he was just an incredible drummer too. His name is Seth Falk. Might as well give him a shout out.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you about Seth, because in watching some videos and listening to you guys, I was curious about how you guys met, and was going to say, yeah, what a drummer he is and what a great singer he is. Yeah.
He's really good. So we had, with the band in college, the Fireflies, we had a drummer before him, a guy named Adam Kriskow, and he's gone on to do some really incredible things too. He drums, I think his main gig these days is with Tegan and Sarah.
Yeah.
But I know he's like subbed with Miley Cyrus, some really big names, Brandon Flowers, and he was just kind of moving on from the project at the time. And Seth was a big fan of our band, and we knew he was a great drummer. I don't think any of us realized how good he could sing though at the time. And we asked him to come in, and he came in, and he was able to just play through all the songs like first time. We weren't there for him to practice. He had learned the songs, and we were just able to seamlessly move on to the next phase of that project.
Wow.
And so when that project, we all kind of parted ways. Dan's career was starting to take off, and he was going to be moving to LA. And Will's band was doing really well too. We just kind of all amicably moved on and stayed friends. And I asked Seth, "Did you want to start something new?" And we started Nightmare River Band together. And he ended up. It was me and him the whole time. Will and Dan from Fireflies have both been auxiliary members of the band too. Dan will show up and play accordion, or Will spent a lot of time playing lead guitar in the band too, to various lineups just to keep the project going. And but yeah, it was always me and Seth, and still is. We still release music. It's just we're on the other side of the world.
Yeah. I really just love the way you guys play together. You can tell that it has a lot of history when the sound of it, but it's just a kinship as well. There's two different kinds of connections. It really comes across in the music, the way you guys play with each other. It's fantastic.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time. The first 5 years of us playing together, I was playing bass, and I think that really helped. So when I stepped out and we started doing my music and I moved to guitar, I think he had a pretty good understanding of what I would want from a rhythm section. And we brought some new guys in, and it just worked.
Yeah, it's really good. And by the way, I love the name of the band, and I was wanting to ask you, what is the origin of the name of the band?
So I'm a huge Jim Henson fan.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a Christmas special called Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas.
Yes.
There was a band in there. The whole special revolves around a battle of the bands. One of the bands that enters, they're kind of like the bad boy band. Their song sounds kind of like Foxy Lady. And all the other bands are doing like kind of jug band music, and they come in with their electric guitars, do this hard rock song. And they were called the River Bottom Nightmare Gang. And I always thought that was it's like a really cool name for a project, but obviously we couldn't just take that. That probably wouldn't work out so well. So we were kind of moving the words around, and it actually ended up being my dad that put that combination together. He's got the Nightmare River Band out of River Bottom Nightmare Gang.
That's great.
Yeah, so we rolled with it, and later on, as like lineups had changed, and it was the outlet for all of my songwriting. I was reading a book where Tom Petty talks about how he would never be in a band that didn't have his name in it, and that kind of resonated with me as projects were starting to change, and I put so many years and effort into Nightmare River Band, and I went on this solo tour, and I was booking it as Matt Krahula of the Nightmare River Band, and people were really confused. Well, is it your band? Is it your music? What are you playing? And there were so many questions, and I realized that Tom Petty was right, as he probably almost always was. And so I added my name to the front as Matt Krahula and the Nightmare River Band.
Yeah, that's really great. I was curious about the first of all the origin of that, and then how your name sits at the front of that. But that makes complete sense. And the wisdom of Tom Petty, it carries on,
Yep. I wanted something where no matter what, the work I put into my music, people, not so much from not that I care if they know my name, but it was kind of holding back my ability to perform as two facets of the project. And
sure.
As we get older, it's not always easy depending on funding and payouts and stuff. I can't always get 4 guys on the road. So if I can get 2 guys, that's great. If I can get 3, that's even better. But a lot of times it's just me. So I couldn't really book the Nightmare River Band and show up alone.
Right. Yeah. So this way, no matter what, the title of the project is always correct, because you're always going to be there, and it's maybe you, or it may be you and someone from the band. So then
Yeah.
the title's the label is always correct. So yeah, that's good.
And it solved just the merch problem. I can sell Nightmare River Band albums at my solo shows and do all that music, and people kind of understand it without me having to go through each time I send an email to a booking agent or a promoter, having to explain exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about this new album that's out, that is just in my head so much is leading up to us chatting today. For the listeners who may not be familiar, who are now going to go out and check it out. So can you explain the origin of how this project came to be from the previous project, and just the timeline of how all that happened?
Yeah. So in 2012, I released an album with the Nightmare River Band called Last Goodbye, and the title track was centered around my grandfather had passed away, and I wrote this song called Last Goodbye for him, and the album kind of ended up a lot of the songs ended up having a very farewell theme to it, and I think when people initially heard that record, they thought it was us saying goodbye as the Nightmare River Band, but it was really me saying goodbye. A lot of the songs were written when the band Fireflies was dissolving. So about a third of the songs are about moving on from that project, which I kind of wrote them more as sounding like moving on from a relationship. In a lot of ways, I'm sure you play in bands, you know what it's like when one splits up.
Yep,
it can
absolutely.
be emotional. So the lead song was about my grandfather, and then a few of the songs were about an actual relationship, and some were about the band ending, and it just ended up being an album about saying goodbye. And it did pretty well. It ended up in the CMJ Top 40, and we ended up playing Summerfest and South by Southwest, and we toured quite a bit on that album, and got really, really favorable press write-ups from some big outlets like Relics and Pop Matters. Made some top 10 lists for the year. It was a very exciting few months for us around that album. And being in Hawaii, I do some of those songs, but a lot of the songs I write now are more about my lifestyle here. And during COVID, I was sitting at home and thinking a lot about that record and how well it did, and thinking that maybe it had some more life left in it. And what would I do to extend that songwriting to maybe a new crowd? And so it was coming up on its 10-year anniversary. So I reached out to a lot of the people that I had met touring over the years, that were either people we traded shows with, or people I created music with, or just people that I really admired. And I reached out and asked each of them to reinterpret one of the songs from Last Goodbye. And I tried to, it was kind of a combination of songwriters and producers and all different, they're all at all different levels of their careers and spread out all over the United States. So they each created their version completely without me involved. I had already created a version of the song. I wanted to hear what it would sound like when I wasn't involved. So I sent it to Dan Romer, who works in LA, and Peter Kirk, who has a band called Panama Wedding that was pretty well known. I think they're on Glass Note Records. Jessica Rose in Nashville, and my buddy Will with his band Horrible of Light. Eden James, who's an Australian, making music now in Austin, Texas, and he's had a #1 hit in Greece. And I just asked this list of people to each see what they could do, and everybody was excited to be part of it, and they all just brought their A games and created this very special album that it means a lot to me, because I would get the songs coming in one at a time and hear this completely new version of something I had written. The album came out now 11, almost 12 years ago, but I wrote a lot of those songs 3 or 4 years before that album came out. And it was something I had been working on for a while. And just to hear what everybody brought to them, some of them stayed close to my version. Some of them are vastly different.
Vastly different, yeah. Yeah.
So it's been awesome, and people are really enjoying it. It's getting streamed quite a bit, and people get a lot of emails about how much people are loving it, and a lot of the old fans have jumped on the new album too, which is really cool. And I'm hoping it's bringing some attention to each each of the artists that contributed to it as well, because they're all so talented. There's two Hawaii artists. Kind of funny, when I asked them to do this wasn't the case. They did a duet, a guy named Johnny Helm and Jenny M. And then since then, now I'm the bass player in each of their respective projects. So when they play live, often I'm the bass player. Jenny is a wonderful songwriter. We recently opened up for Dashboard Confessional when they were here. Johnny's great too. We opened up for Midland when they were in town. So I've gotten to, it was, for them, it really birthed a friendship for all of us too, because I knew them and was a fan of theirs, but we really got to work together on something, and it's been great.
I first of all, I went back and listened to the original album and loved it, and I love the new interpretations of the songs for the same yet different reasons, right? Because I mean, at the root of it, they're great songs. So they may have, the production may be different, the feel, the vocal choices, they may be different, but at the root of it, you wrote some great songs, man. These are really fantastic songs.
Thank you very much.
And I just, what an exciting thing it has to be for you to hear this new breath breathed into these songs that you wrote so many years ago. What a great feeling that has to be. It
really does. It still feels amazing. And I think a big thing that came out of this project for me was, the last few years, the first few years I was in Hawaii, especially, most of the music I released, I played every instrument on, and it was just me doing it by myself. And I'm really happy with how a lot of it turned out, and I'm proud of a lot of the stuff I made. But I think this project reminded me how much fun it is to collaborate with people, and how there's so much to gain by getting other ideas and just feedback and other perspectives. Somebody can hear a lyric that makes perfect sense to me because I wrote it with intent, but maybe doesn't really deliver on the listener end if you don't have a backstory, and just little things like that. Moving forward, I think there's a lot of collaboration in my path.
Yeah, well, I don't blame you. I would too. I mean, to hear what everyone did, and obviously, I think it's safe to say that they demonstrated their feelings for you as well by the gentle care they took with those songs, right? And they performed them like they were their own, which it's quite a testament to you, the way that they were handled.
They were all donating their time which really meant a lot.
Wow.
On the friendship side too for me, that so many people would commit to doing something so time consuming, and that they would donate their talent to this, and hopefully the album will make some money and we'll all get some money from it. But,
sure.
That's never a guarantee these days.
These days, it's an interesting world we're living in, So were you completely hands off in the creative process did you say take the song and do your thing, or did they ask for any advice on how to do any of it?
A few of the artists asked me for they would send me a demo and just say, I remember Johnny Helm. So this was kind of a fun one is I asked Jenny M to do the song Josie because I always thought that song would sound really great sung by a woman, and her manager got back to me and said she would love to be part of this. We used Johnny Helm as our producer for a lot of her stuff, and I said, well, I know Johnny, that would be awesome, have him produce it. And I just said I'll call him and iron out details and how that'll work. So I called Johnny, and 2-3 days later, he had a demo worked up, and he hadn't had a chance to get Jenny to sing on it yet, and he was singing it, and he sent it over, and he's got such a beautiful, deep, raspy voice, kind of reminiscent of Counting Crows, or and when I heard it, I thought, geez, I think this guy needs to be on this album somewhere, and how am I gonna fit him in, because he sounds so good on this, and he was just singing it for the demo, and he called me not knowing I was having these thoughts and said, I just made this demo and I am really in love with this song, and I really would like to be the person that sings it. And he said, I don't want to step on any toes, but I'm just kind of growing attached to this. And I said, Yeah, I was having the same thought on my end. What if you guys did it as a duet? And he was all on board and she was all on board because they're really close friends too. And it was one of those kind of magical moments where it came. I didn't really partake in the creative process, but there was a little more question and answer, I guess.
Yeah.
And then a couple other people sent me demos and asked if they were along the right track. And I really just mostly wrote back. I think in all those cases I wrote back, yeah, this is awesome. Keep going. You know, and the only thing I performed on any of it was Dan Romer's track. He needed an upright bass player. So he sent me the sheet music and I just played exactly what he wrote. So I wasn't really part of the creative aspect of it, but I felt like it'd be silly to have to pay a few $100s for an upright bass player to do something I could do in like 20 minutes in my apartment.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Have you changed any interpretations of any of these songs, performing them out now that maybe it's leaning a little more towards the way these artists did it, or are you still doing those songs the way you've always done them?
So right now, most of my gigs that I do are kind of either acoustic or I have a fun trio that's like a percussionist, mandolin, and then me on acoustic guitar. So I don't really have the instrumentation to actually do like a lot of the arrangement stuff that they do. I think one of the ones that I could really see my band doing if I was going to do a full band show is the new arrangement of Mary is really fun with the jaw harp.
Yeah, I agree.
That's definitely one that I could see lending itself to my style of singing and stuff. And I like a lot of people changed like minor lyrics, and there was a few instances where I think I'll probably adapt those. Like Dan Romer, instead of I said lightning striking through the trees, and he changed it to lightning stirring through the trees, and I thought, wow, I really like that. That's a real and. There was a few other ones that the phrasing and I just really enjoyed. And I do think a lot of it will find its way, even just kind of organically, because I've listened to this record so many times. I think some of my phrasing will probably change a little bit on a bunch of them.
Yeah, that's great. You know, I'm a singer of other people's songs. I'm not a songwriter. I play and I sing. But I just can't imagine what that has to be like to hear someone else sing your songs, and they're your babies, right? And to hear someone else do their thing with it has to be such a huge feeling.
It's extremely rewarding. And for a long time, I think this is a good way to lend my songs to other people too. Is, you know, I've released them and now they've been recorded by another artist. For the longest time, I was so attached to my songs, like writing a song. Like, would I ever want to give this away to another artist? Like, or does it mean too much to me? And over the years, I've gotten better. I co-write with a lot of people, and I love the idea of being a stay-at-home songwriter. You know, and having I'm hoping this project people will see what my music can sound like in a lot of different genres and with the different voices, whether male or female, and see the potential that it has. And I'm hoping it could lead down a path to getting, you know, a little attention from a publisher, or getting to a point where I can get my music cut more regularly by bigger artists. And I struggled with ideas on how to get to that point for a while, and I think it was kind of silly. Sometimes you overlook the obvious one, that is, like, I have a ton of friends that are pretty successful. Why don't I just ask?
Yeah.
And so I did, and they all
showed up, right? And and they did beautifully with those songs. Yeah, I just, like I said, I love the source material, the first album of it, but wow, just to hear them put their fingerprint on it was beautiful and really nice.
Yeah, it's also the first project where, moving forward with any new music, I always have doubts. Is this good enough? Is this up to the standard that I'm used to putting out? And I didn't even have to think about it on this one. I just, they made their versions. I knew how talented everybody involved was. They sent them over to my friend John Jetter, who mixed and mastered everything. I wanted one person to mix and master everything to at least unify some of the sonic quality. And I just got the versions and heard them, and they were usually complete. And I just, well, that one's really good too. I like it.
Yeah.
I didn't have to feel weird because it wasn't me. I wasn't complimenting myself at this point, you know?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. As you were explaining it, it kind of answered the question that I was going to ask of, was it all recorded in the same studio? Because sonically, it's quite consistent of how everything sounds, and the fact that it was recorded in different studios with different producers, and it explains a lot that it was mixed by the same person. But it's quite a consistent sounding project.
Yeah, so most of them were done scattered around the United States. So part of the reason when I first thought of the idea for the project, I thought about Henry Kapono, the guy that I played bass for, his band Cecilio and Kapono. That was on Columbia Records. He, about 5 or 6 years ago, he put out an album called The Songs of C&K, where he invited artists from all over Hawaii, from the up-and-coming younger generation artists, to come in and create a new version of one of his songs that he duetted on with them. And it was just a nice project he did that brought a lot of really nice attention to the next generation of musicians. And so that was kind of in my mind when I was thinking about things that I could do for the 10-year anniversary of this album. And which I forgot to mention, actually, because there were so many artists involved, it took more than a year, and we ended up putting it out for the 11th. Which is why it's called Last Goodbye 11. But it made sense. 11 new artists, 11 songs, 11 years. But so I was really inspired by this thing Henry did, but I was thinking, well, I guess we could sing something together, but we're not going to be in the same place. We're not going to be able to work on arrangements that quickly together. Why don't I just let these people kind of fly on their own? And a lot of them I knew had home studios and produced at a very high, and easily could have probably mixed and mastered their own stuff too. But I thought lessening the amount of work each artist had to do, so they don't have to give me a mix. They don't have to master it. John was my roommate in New York for 7 years, and he's got a wonderful studio in Queens. And so we sent the work his way, and he's such a talented mix and master engineer. He does a ton of major label work. But yeah, I think that's the sonic tie. 3 of the tunes were tracked at the same studio. A few of my friends that didn't have as much access to a home studio setup, or like that wanted to track a lot, like get a really nice drum sound, we sent them to a studio in Astoria. So that would have been Robots with Eden James, Home with Jessica Rose, and Bird Streets, the Walk On. Mm-hmm. They all tracked at the same studio. And I sent in some of my favorite session guys that the same drummer played on 2 out of 3. The same bass player played on all 3 of those. And it just kind of, so those 3 found their sound that way.
Yeah. It all sounds really good, man. I really, really love it. But again, like I was saying, it helps when it starts with a good song, right? I mean, it's, you can try to dress it up, but if the source is not where it should be, a lot of it's for nothing, and thankfully they all had great songs to work with, so they just put their touch on it, and it really translates well.
Well, thank you. Yeah. It's interesting you use the word source too. I had a professor in college that people would always be talking about gear and like, oh, new guitar, new microphone, and he would like, his whole thing was like, it doesn't matter what you have if the source isn't any good.
Yeah.
I mean, the artist or the song.
Yeah, that's it, Or musicians get so wrapped up in gear and pedals and amps, and the source it has to come from the heart, And I agree. Well, Matt, this has been a pleasure, and before we go, I want everyone that's listening to have an opportunity to find out where to go and listen to your stuff. You're on all the major streaming services?
All the major streaming services. My YouTube channel is just youtube.com/Matt Krahula. My website is krahula.com. It's my last name, KRAHULA.com. And Instagram is just Matt Krahula. Pretty much, I tried to keep everything Matt Krahula.
And you have as I remember looking at your website, you have a nice little merch section with some apparel and some music as well, right?
Yeah, I have. So I have 6 albums out, I think now, and I have an album coming later this summer about my life here in Hawaii called This Island Life. And I also have a new single coming out next month with a fiddle player from Canada named Sierra Noble. So that'll be coming soon. And I do have some merch. I have t-shirts, CDs. The original Last Goodbye we pressed on vinyl. So cool. I have vinyl copies of that. And I'm trying to think what else is up there. That might be it at the moment.
I'm actually going to purchase one of the Krahula t-shirts that has the question mark after your last name.
Right on.
I absolutely love that shirt.
Oh,
yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool. Well, man, best of luck to you. I know you're out there hustling. You're working a lot, and I'm just happy that you're bringing your talent to the masses. And I just encourage everyone to go out and check out Matt's music. Give it a listen. I'm a fan of what he has done and what he's continuing to do, and I can't wait to hear the new material that's going to be released soon.
Oh, thank you, Brad.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, best of luck to you. And I just enjoyed hanging out with you today.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thank you for making the time for me.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening to the Bandwich Tapes. I'm your host, Brad Williams. The show's theme is called Playcation and was written by Mark Mundy. Drop me a line at the email address, thebandwichtapes@gmail.com. Make sure to subscribe to receive new episodes of the podcast. And while you're at it, please tell someone else about the show. Thanks for listening.